FBI Uniform Crime Reports have released their 2018 data, and this is always like a year after because it takes a long time to put this stuff together. And one of the things that the 2018 tables for Uniform Crime Reports show is that over 5 times as many people were killed with knives and or other instruments than were killed with the rifles that everyone wants to ban. There's also a new book out about all of this called America, Guns and Freedom, A Journey into Politics and the Public Health and Gun Control Movements by Dr. Miguel Faria, who has also testified before Congress, as I understand it, and was instrumental when Congress was considering gun research and whether or not taxpayer dollars would be used for that as it relates to the CDC. And ultimately, Dr. Faria was involved in the consideration of the Dickey Amendment. And I guess, and as I understand his testimony, contributed to the Senate actually and House adopting that. He joins us by the phone now. Doctor, always good to talk to someone who definitely gets it. And you have a very unique perspective on this issue. First off, thank you for joining me. And secondly, congrats on the book, which is out today.
Thank you very much. I am very happy to be here.
Well, it's good to speak with you.
Yes, and you put that very well. It's exactly what happened in 1996 in the spring of that year. 4 of us testified, including Dr. Timothy Wheeler, who is the founder of Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. And the question that was put to us is, what are the scientific merits of the gun research that is coming out of the CDC and other public health schools? And that was a very easy answer. All of the 4 of us basically testified that the research was politicized, it was tainted, it was biased, it was result-oriented, which means that the results were already preordained as to what the researcher had to conclude saying, and therefore it was invalid. I call it junk science or pseudoscience, and as a result, as you mentioned, I play a little part in having the Dickey Amendment that passed a few months later in the summer of 1996.
Huge. And for those who are unaware, the Dickey Amendment, there was a discussion about using taxpayer dollars to support what Dr. Faria is calling, which it was pseudoscience, and no money was ever banned. They just said you can't use taxpayer dollars for advocacy. You can study it, but you can't, as you were saying, you can't politicize it the way that they had been.
Exactly. The media had immediately tried to claim that Congress was stopping science, that they were going against the scientific research, and that is exactly the opposite. Congress stood for scientific research, and what it did was ban gun control, masquerading as science. And we all testified to that, and I am proud to say that up to this day, that law, that restriction remains in place. And that is one of the things that the Democrats want to remove under the table. They have been using really public health as a way to circumvent the Constitution. In fact, the slogan that they have is that gun violence has become an epidemic, that it was a public health issue, and that something needed to be done because guns were like viruses that needed to be eradicated, which right there are so many errors in those statements. Guns are not viruses. Guns are inanimate objects. It requires a person to pull a trigger. They do not reproduce, and they do not respond to any kind of antibiotics. They are inanimate objects, and therefore the whole concept of public health is invalid. Public health was established for contagious diseases, and they have done a good job with that. But when it came to gun research, it has become a politicized area of pseudoscience, and that is very, very bad because, when science becomes subjugated to political concerns and tyranny, then we have what happened in the 20th century. that we have 100 million people that were killed by their own governments, and the medical profession was in many cases supportive of those tyrannical governments.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and you know that your background, I was reading about your family's background. You were born in Cuba, and it's a pretty incredible story. So this is something with which you have firsthand knowledge. You also discuss in this book, America, Guns, and Freedom, you discuss 5 ingredients that contribute to tyranny. And you also discuss gun registration, you get into confiscation, but you also hit up on the role of mental illness in all of these mass casualty incidents involving illegally used firearms. From your medical background, what's your thought on the role of mental illness in this?
I think that in the case of these mass shooters, is what I call a mass shooting derangement syndrome. And I'm not saying that they are not able to recognize what they're doing. No, they are criminal people who have become, basically, they blame society for their problems. And some of this is because the socialistic tendency of our society. They are telling the children that they don't have to compete, that all they have to do is reach for the stars. Some of these children who are borderline sociopath and psychopath, as they grow older, those things that were promised them did not happen. Their own personal failures are translated into a hate, and that is why they have become mass shooters. And we really need to tighten up on the mental health system. That is the main problem. And if the Democrats really care about this, that's what they should be working on, mental health, because we know that a lot of the mass shooters are sociopaths and psychopaths. And, something has to be done. But instead, what do? They want to take guns away from the law-abiding citizens who do not really participate in these crimes. Criminals are always going to obtain their guns, and they're going to do it illegally or any way they can. And the criminal justice system also needs to be tightened up. We have a two pillars of problems. One is the mental health system and the criminal justice system, which has a basically revolving prison doors. We know, but from FBI statistics, that 7% of criminals in any given community carry out 75% of all the serious crimes. Why are these people out? And no, they always go back to restrict the constitutional rights of citizens. And really, this is what I wanted to do when I was editor of the Journal of the Medical Association of Georgia. Let's have a real debate, and let's publish good papers on both sides of this issue. But I was told, oh, no. You have to have that preordained result, that guns are bad, that systematically build a case that gun ownership causes death. In fact, that's a direct quotation from a public health official. We need to systematically build a case that gun ownership results in death. And I say, no, I disagree, and you can imagine, as editor of the Journal,
they didn't like that.
The organization. And all I wanted was that both sides of the debate to be promulgated. I mean, that is what science should be, the free exchange of ideas, but it was not like that. They were intolerant. They were
exactly. And you can't have intolerance in this kind of discussion, especially if you're searching for the truth. The book is America, Guns, and Freedom, A Journey into Politics and the Public Health and Gun Control Movements. Very interesting examination of these issues in this context. Dr. Miguel Faria, appreciate what you have done and your voice out there with this new book. Congratulations, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, and glad that you have me on your excellent show.
Thank you. Good to talk with you. And folks, that book is out today, and you can order that on Amazon.